They say that love
How
can
could you
blind
say
you,
that to me?
but money? Money has a way of making people see only themselves. Emily sat by the window, quietly watching the city lights blur through the car glass. Her husband, David, was beside her, adjusting his cufflinks, checking his reflection for the fifth time, fixing hair that didn't need fixing. He looked perfect, at least on the outside. To everyone else, David was the dream husband, successful, charming, confident, the kind of man people called a catch. But behind closed doors, the truth was less flattering. He cared about one thing, and one thing only: appearances. If the house wasn't spotless, he'd make a snide comment. If Emily didn't wear the latest trends, he'd sigh loudly, as if she embarrassed him. And if she dared to speak her mind, he'd brush her off with that same patronizing smile. But tonight, Emily was done pretending. As the car pulled up to Le Chateau d'Or, the most exclusive restaurant in town, she knew exactly what she was walking into. Not just a dinner, not just another evening of keeping up appearances. This was the stage. And David was about to play his part perfectly, without ever realizing it. Emily stepped out first. Her dress, beige, simple, modest, fluttered slightly in the breeze. No jewelry, no glitter, no designer label to scream for attention, just a woman standing quietly in her power. David frowned. "Emily, what are you wearing?" he asked, voice dripping with irritation. "This dinner is important. My colleagues from the firm will be there. You can't show up looking like that." Emily's lips curled into the faintest smile. "Oh, I thought it was fine," she replied softly. "It's clean. It's comfortable." David scoffed. "Comfortable? This isn't about comfort, Emily. It's about image. People will think—" She interrupted, eyes steady. "Let them think whatever they want." He stared at her, confused. She never talked back before. Inside the restaurant, everything shimmered. Golden light bounced off crystal glasses, the hum of conversation mixed with the sound of violins. Waiters glided gracefully between tables, each movement rehearsed to perfection. And at the center of it all, David, strutting like he owned the place. He greeted the maitre d', shook hands, smiled for attention. Emily followed behind, silent, graceful, but observant. "Table for Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," David said proudly. The maitre d' nodded politely, a knowing glint in his eyes as he led them to their reserved table, near the center. Her table, though David didn't know that. As they sat, one of the servers approached, bowing slightly to Emily. "Good evening, Mrs." he began, catching himself when she gave a subtle look that said, "Not yet." David didn't notice. He was too busy talking about himself, how he closed another big deal, how his boss praised his presentation, how life was just perfect, until his eyes landed on Emily's dress again. "Seriously, Em, this is embarrassing," he muttered under his breath. "Couldn't you have picked something classier? I mean, I'm trying to make an impression here." Emily looked at him, calm and unbothered. "Maybe it's not the dress that needs to change, David." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," she said with a polite smile. "Just thinking out loud." The waiter poured their wine, a vintage red from a vineyard Emily personally invested in years ago. David raised his glass, pretending to know what he was drinking. "Now this," he said proudly, "this is the good stuff. You can't get this anywhere else." Emily's eyes sparkled. "Oh, I know," she thought, "because I own every single bottle." As the night went on, David bragged louder, laughed harder, trying to impress his colleagues. And the more he talked, the more Emily sat back, quiet, graceful, untouchable. Because while he thought he was on top of the world, he was sitting right inside hers. And soon, he would realize just how small his world truly was. Long before the dinner that would change everything, there was another night, a much colder one. A small apartment, a woman sitting on the floor, crying quietly as unpaid bills covered the coffee table. That woman was Emily. Back then, she wasn't the owner of a restaurant or the successful woman people whispered about in private. She was just a dreamer, broke, tired, and married to a man who made her feel invisible. David had just lost his job at the time, and instead of finding strength together, he blamed her for everything. He said, "You should have pushed me harder. You don't inspire me, Emily. You hold me back." Those words stuck with her like scars. But what David didn't know was that every insult, every condescending look, every time he made her feel like she wasn't enough, Emily was building something quietly inside her. A fire. She started small, cooking at night, experimenting with recipes, combining the flavors her late grandmother had taught her as a child. Her kitchen became her escape, her therapy. At first, she sold baked goods from home. Cupcakes, pastries, then meal boxes for office workers who wanted homemade food. People loved it. Her food wasn't just good, it felt like home. Within months, local cafes started ordering from her. Then a catering company reached out, and soon after, a wealthy investor tasted her food at an event and offered her an opportunity she couldn't refuse. But Emily refused to rely on anyone else ever again. She took the offer, yes, but she worked double shifts, learned the business side, the numbers, the management, the marketing. She didn't just cook anymore. She built. And after 3 years of sweat, rejection, and sleepless nights, she opened her first restaurant, Le Chateau d'Or. It was elegant, timeless, and full of heart, everything Emily was, but she made one promise to herself. No one, not even David, would know it was hers. She signed the ownership papers under her maiden name, Emily Carter, and let her trusted manager, Mark, be the public face of it. To David, it was just another fancy place he liked to take his colleagues to pretend he belonged among the rich and powerful. He had no idea the woman he looked down on every day was the one who made it all possible. And that secret, that quiet, poetic justice, became Emily's strength. While David bragged about investments he didn't understand, Emily's restaurant flourished. While he criticized her for not doing enough, she was employing dozens of people, creating art on a plate, and earning the respect of an entire industry. She'd smile at him during dinner parties, nod politely, and think, if only you knew. But deep down, she did love him once. She had wanted him to be proud of her, to see her as an equal. That's why she never told him the truth. Until now. Because tonight, as David mocked her dress and flaunted his ego in the very restaurant she built from nothing, Emily decided it was time. Time for him to see who she really was. Not the quiet wife he dismissed, not the woman behind him, but the one who stood above him, calm, elegant, and in full control. And as the waiter approached again, calling her Mrs. Carter, by mistake, David's fork froze mid-air. His face changed. Confusion, then curiosity, then something darker. Fear. Emily smiled faintly. "Oh, didn't I tell you, darling?" she said sweetly. "I own this place." The room seemed to freeze. The sound of clinking glasses, the gentle laughter from nearby tables, all of it blurred into silence. David stared at her, eyes wide, fork still hovering halfway to his mouth. What do you mean?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. Emily didn't answer right away. She took a sip of wine, calm, collected, her every move deliberate, a woman in full control of her story. "I mean exactly what I said," she replied softly. "This restaurant is mine." The words hung in the air like smoke, thick and heavy. David tried to laugh it off. "Right, you're joking, right? Emily, come on. You don't even know anything about restaurants." But his colleagues were already whispering. One of them, his boss, Mr. Langford, looked at Emily with newfound respect. "Oh, you're that Emily Carter?" he asked. I've read about this place. The food, the atmosphere, the consistency. It's legendary. Emily smiled. I'm glad you think so. David's face turned pale. He fumbled for words, searching for some way to regain control of the moment. Wait, why didn't you ever tell me? Why would you hide something like this from your husband? Her gaze was steady. Because you never asked, she said quietly. And even if you had, you wouldn't have listened. The words hit him harder than he expected. The table fell silent. His colleagues pretended to look at their menus, but everyone could feel the tension. The man who once prided himself on control now looked small, fragile, exposed. David forced a smile, desperate to save face. Well, the journalist's eyes widened. So all of this, the restaurant, your success, it wasn't overnight? Emily shook her head. No. Every recipe, every detail of this place was crafted over years. Early mornings, sleepless nights, financial struggles, moments when I doubted myself. Every obstacle, every insult, every time someone tried to tell me I wasn't enough. I used it to push myself further. He scribbled again, hardly looking up. And David, your husband, he knew nothing about this? Emily's expression softened for a brief moment, memories flickering in her mind. He thought he knew me, but the truth is, he never really did. He mocked me, dismissed me, belittled me, not realizing that I was quietly building something far greater than he could ever imagine. The journalist paused, sensing her emotion. It must have been difficult. Emily leaned back slightly, taking a measured breath. It was. There were nights I cried in silence, nights I questioned if it was worth it. But then I remembered why I started. Not for him, not for anyone else, for me. For the people who needed someone to prove that you don't need permission to succeed, you don't need someone's approval to shine. The camera slowly zoomed in on her face, capturing the subtle strength in her eyes. The audience, though unseen, could feel the quiet intensity radiating from her. She continued, voice growing warmer but still commanding attention. Building this restaurant wasn't just about food. It was about creating a space where people feel respected, valued, and inspired, where dreams can be nurtured, where kindness and excellence coexist. That's the lesson. That's the heart. The journalist looked impressed, almost in awe. So your story isn't just about success, it's about empowerment. Emily nodded. Exactly. It's about showing people, especially women who are often told they aren't enough, that you can create your own life, that even when you're underestimated, even when the people closest to you doubt you, you can rise, quietly, confidently, and unapologetically. Her gaze drifted toward the window, watching the city below hum with life, the streets, the cars, the people, all moving forward, while she had paused long enough to master herself. Her phone buzzed lightly, a message from Mark. Lunch service is full. You're ready. Emily smiled to herself, placing her hands lightly on the table. Yes, she thought, I'm ready. She stood, gliding toward the dining room. Every step was measured, every gesture confident. The staff greeted her with smiles of admiration, the air charged with respect and warmth. As she entered the dining room, cameras and lights receded into the background. She wasn't performing for them, she was simply being. Emily Carter, a woman who had been underestimated, belittled, and dismissed, now standing in her full truth. And somewhere beyond the walls of Le Chateau d'Or, people would whisper about her story. A story not of revenge, not of arrogance, not of a cheap dress, but of strength, resilience, and the quiet, unstoppable rise of a woman who finally owned her life. David woke up to silence. The apartment was cold, the morning sun filtering weakly through the blinds. The familiar hum of city life outside felt distant, almost unreal. He sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. Last night replayed over and over in his mind. Emily's calm smile, the restaurant, the whispers of his colleagues, the note she left on the counter. Every detail burned into him, impossible to erase. For the first time, he understood the weight of his actions. All the years he had mocked her, all the subtle insults, all the times he dismissed her dreams, they had consequences. He remembered the beige dress, how he had laughed, how he had tried to belittle her, how he had thought he was in control, and now that control was gone, stripped away by a woman he had underestimated his entire life. He got up and walked to the window, staring at the bustling street below. People rushed by, unaware of the lessons happening in the world above. For the first time, he felt small, truly small. He replayed Emily's words in his head. You cannot rely on others to see your worth. True power is built quietly, with patience and resilience. It's about freedom, not revenge. He felt the bitter truth settle in his chest. He had never valued her, never truly seen her strength. He had measured her by appearances, by superficial things, and had missed the woman standing right beside him. His phone buzzed. Another text, this time from his assistant. Your schedule for the day has changed. The board wants a meeting about last night's dinner incident. David swallowed hard. He had not only lost face at home, but also in his professional life. The humiliation of that night had spread farther than he could have imagined. He sank into a chair, staring at the beige dress folded neatly on the chair across the room. The fabric, simple and unassuming, now seemed symbolic, the armor of the woman he failed to recognize. He remembered the way she had stood in the restaurant, commanding respect without shouting. The way she had handled the interview, turning her struggle into inspiration for thousands. The way she had left him with nothing but truth. No revenge, no malice, just the undeniable fact that he had lost sight of what truly mattered. David realized something he had never admitted to himself. He had been living in a shadow of his own ego, a shadow of the person he thought he was. And Emily had been the light all along. He remembered moments from their marriage, the small sacrifices she made quietly, the times she had encouraged him, the countless ways she had held their life together. All of it, unnoticed, unappreciated, taken for granted. His chest tightened with regret. He wanted to call her, to apologize, to somehow undo the damage. But he knew some lessons couldn't be reversed. Some truths couldn't be erased. He reached for the note she had left, reading it again. I didn't leave to hurt you. I left because I finally remembered who I am. You always said I'd never make it without you. But the truth is, you just couldn't handle a woman who didn't need saving. He closed his eyes. The words were a mirror, a reflection of his arrogance, his blindness, and his failure to see her worth. David realized the depth of what he had lost. It wasn't just a wife or a partner. It was someone extraordinary, someone who had silently endured, persevered, and ultimately risen far above him. He sat in silence for what felt like hours, the weight of understanding pressing down on him. The man who once believed he controlled everything now felt powerless. The pride that had defined him shattered. And in that quiet realization, a new truth emerged. No amount of money, ego, or status could ever replace respect, love, and acknowledgement for someone truly remarkable. For the first time, David understood. Emily was never just his wife. She was, and always had been, a force of her own. And he had spent years blind to it. The city hummed with life as Emily stepped out into the bright morning, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. The streets were alive with possibility, and she felt it in her bones, a pulse of energy that matched the rhythm of her heart. For years, she had poured herself into Le Chateau d'Or, building it from scratch, shaping every detail, perfecting every flavor, training every employee. The restaurant had become her sanctuary, her proof that she could succeed despite the doubt and mockery she had endured.
But now, she wanted more. Not more money, not more fame, more impact. She wanted to carry the story, the spirit, the essence of what she had created into the wider world. Her notebook lay open on the desk, pages filled with sketches, floor plans, and handwritten notes. Each page was a vision of expansion, boutique cafes that maintained the warmth and elegance of her flagship restaurant, community programs to support young chefs, collaborations with local artisans, and immersive culinary experiences that celebrated both food and story. Mark, her trusted manager, stepped into the office carrying a thick folder of investor proposals. "The meetings are set," he said, his voice respectful but tinged with excitement. "They're impressed with your vision. They're ready for numbers, plans, the full package." Emily leaned back in her chair, taking a deep breath. The city skyline stretched beyond the windows, sunlight glinting off glass towers, reflecting the possibilities she was about to embrace. "Good," she said softly, but with absolute conviction. "Let's show them what we can do." Her voice carried authority, calm, composed, inspiring. She outlined her vision with precision: expansion plans, new locations, training programs, community engagement. Every idea had been nurtured over months of research and reflection, shaped by experience, driven by purpose. "It's not about the money," she said. "It's about creating spaces where people feel valued, empowered, and inspired, where dreams can be nurtured, where kindness and excellence coexist. That's the lesson."
Emily smiled warmly, kneeling slightly to meet her gaze. "It is possible," she said, "but you have to define your own path, not wait for anyone else to validate you. Challenges will come, doubt will come, and yes, sometimes people will laugh, but the strength you need is already inside you. You just have to claim it." Her presence was magnetic, but not domineering. She didn't need to demand attention. It came naturally, through the example of her life, the authenticity of her story, and the quiet power she carried. The young women in the room were absorbing more than advice. They were witnessing resilience, courage, and the embodiment of empowerment. Later, Emily walked to the back of the cafe, reviewing plans for the next location. The blueprint lay spread across the table, detailing not just the physical space, but the programs, the mentorship schedules, and the vision for community engagement. She imagined the women who would sit at these tables, learning, creating, and growing, their dreams ignited by what she had built. Her thoughts drifted to the challenges she had overcome, the sleepless nights perfecting recipes, the financial struggles, the ridicule from David, and the countless times she had been underestimated. Each memory was no longer a wound, but a stepping stone. Every insult had been transformed into motivation, every doubt into determination. The cafe was alive with energy, the clatter of dishes, the aroma of freshly baked bread, the sound of laughter and conversation. Emily paused by the window, looking out at the city streets below. People hurried along, unaware of the ripple effect one person's resilience could have on countless lives. Her presence was magnetic, but not domineering. She didn't need to demand attention. It came naturally, through the example of her life, the authenticity of her story, and the quiet power she carried. The young women in the room were absorbing more than advice. They were witnessing resilience, courage, and the embodiment of empowerment. Later, Emily walked to the back of the cafe, reviewing plans for the next location. The blueprint lay spread across the table, detailing not just the physical space, but the programs, the mentorship schedules, and the vision for community engagement. She imagined the women who would sit at these tables, learning, creating, and growing, their dreams ignited by what she had built. Her thoughts drifted to the challenges she had overcome, the sleepless nights perfecting recipes, the financial struggles, the ridicule from David, and the countless times she had been underestimated. Each memory was no longer a wound, but a stepping stone. Every insult had been transformed into motivation, every doubt into determination.
The cafe was alive with energy, the clatter of dishes, the aroma of freshly baked bread, the sound of laughter and conversation. Emily paused by the window, looking out at the city streets below. People hurried along, unaware of the ripple effect one person's resilience could have on countless lives. Her presence was magnetic, but not domineering. She didn't need to demand attention, it came naturally, through the example of her life, the authenticity of her story, and the quiet power she carried. The young women in the room were absorbing more than advice. They were witnessing resilience, courage, and the embodiment of empowerment. Later, Emily walked to the back of the cafe, reviewing plans for the next location. The blueprint lay spread across the table, detailing not just the physical space, but the programs, the mentorship schedules, and the vision for community engagement. She imagined the women who would sit at these tables, learning, creating, and growing, their dreams ignited by what she had built. Her thoughts drifted to the challenges she had overcome, the sleepless nights perfecting recipes, the financial struggles, the ridicule from David, and the countless times she had been underestimated. Each memory was no longer a wound, but a stepping stone. Every insult had been transformed into motivation, every doubt into determination. The cafe was alive with energy, the clatter of dishes, the aroma of freshly baked bread, the sound of laughter and conversation. Emily paused by the window, looking out at the city streets below. People hurried along, unaware of the ripple effect one person's resilience could have on countless lives. Her presence was magnetic, but not domineering. She didn't need to demand attention, it came naturally, through the example of her life, the authenticity of her story, and the quiet power she carried. The young women in the room were absorbing more than advice. They were witnessing resilience, courage, and the embodiment of empowerment. Emily smiled warmly, kneeling slightly to meet her gaze. "It is possible," she said, "but you have to define your own path, not wait for anyone else to validate you. Challenges will come, doubt will come, and yes, sometimes people will laugh, but the strength you need is already inside you. You just have to claim it." Her presence was magnetic, but not domineering. She didn't need to demand attention, it came naturally, through the example of her life, the authenticity of her story, and the quiet power she carried. The young women in the room were absorbing more than advice. They were witnessing resilience, courage, and the embodiment of empowerment. Later, Emily walked to the back of the cafe, reviewing plans for the next location. The blueprint lay spread across the table, detailing not just the physical space, but the programs, the mentorship schedules, and the vision for community engagement. She imagined the women who would sit at these tables, learning, creating, and growing, their dreams ignited by what she had built. Her thoughts drifted to the challenges she had overcome, the sleepless nights perfecting recipes, the financial struggles, the ridicule from David, and the countless times she had been underestimated. Each memory was no longer a wound, but a stepping stone. Every insult had been transformed into motivation, every doubt into determination. The cafe was alive with energy, the clatter of dishes, the aroma of freshly baked bread, the sound of laughter and conversation. Emily paused by the window, looking out at the city streets below. People hurried along, unaware of the ripple effect one person's resilience could have on countless lives. Her presence was magnetic, but not domineering. She didn't need to demand attention, it came naturally, through the example of her life, the authenticity of her story, and the quiet power she carried. The young women in the room were absorbing more than advice. They were witnessing resilience, courage, and the embodiment of empowerment.
Mark approached quietly. "Emily, the audience is seated. They're ready for you. Thousands are watching live around the world. This is more than a speech. It's your legacy on display." Emily smiled softly, taking a deep breath. "Good," she said. "Then let's make it count." She stepped onto the stage, the lights illuminating her calm determination. Cameras captured every movement as millions watched online. The energy in the room was palpable. The attendees leaned forward, anticipating the wisdom and insight of a woman who had already changed countless lives. "Thank you for welcoming me," Emily began, voice steady and resonant, carrying through the hall with quiet authority. "I've spent years learning that leadership, success, and empowerment are not about recognition, titles, or wealth. They are about purpose, perseverance, and the courage to rise above doubt, whether from others or from ourselves." She paused, letting the words resonate. "I was underestimated, dismissed, and at times even mocked. But I learned that strength is built in silence, resilience is forged in challenge, and true impact comes not from taking, but from giving. Giving knowledge, guidance, and opportunities to those who will carry it forward." The audience was captivated. Heads nodded, pens scribbled, and hearts absorbed her story. Emily shared her journey, the mockery from her husband, the secret building of a restaurant empire, the mentorship programs, and the global expansion. Each anecdote was more than a narrative. It was a lesson in courage, integrity, and empowerment. She continued, "I've seen what happens when we underestimate potential, in ourselves and in others. I've learned that our limitations are often imposed by perception, not reality. When we nurture talent, encourage creativity, and empower leadership, the results are extraordinary. I stand here not to celebrate my achievements, but to showcase the possibilities of collective growth and empowerment." Later, Emily facilitated a workshop within the summit, guiding international entrepreneurs and young leaders through problem-solving exercises, innovation labs, and team-building simulations. She walked among them, offering advice, encouragement, and challenges designed to stretch their thinking. One participant from Africa paused, fear evident in her eyes. "Emily, I want to lead a program like yours in my country, but I don't know if I can," she confessed. She knelt slightly to meet her gaze. "You can. You already have the vision, the courage, and the will. You just need to take the first step and then the next. Leadership is not about being fearless. It's about moving forward even when fear exists. Trust yourself. The world is ready for what you can offer." Throughout the day, Emily moved seamlessly between presentations, mentoring sessions, and interviews. She addressed cultural differences with sensitivity, tailored advice to each audience, and inspired everyone with her authenticity. Her story wasn't just about personal success. It was a blueprint for transformation, mentorship, and the cultivation of leaders who would continue her impact globally. In a quiet moment backstage, Emily reflected on how far she had come. From a woman underestimated in her marriage, marked for a simple dress, to a global figure inspiring thousands. She realized her journey was about more than business or recognition. It was about creating a ripple effect, a chain of empowerment that would touch generations. Her phone buzzed from international media outlets, invitations to partner organizations, and personal notes from young women who had found courage through her mentorship. She smiled, placing it aside, focusing instead on the task at hand, amplifying her vision, expanding her influence, and ensuring every interaction planted seeds of empowerment. As the day drew to a close, Emily stepped onto the terrace, overlooking the Paris skyline. Lights sparkled across the city, reflecting her sense of achievement and responsibility. She whispered to herself, a quiet affirmation of purpose. "This is bigger than me. This is the change I was meant to inspire." And with that, Emily Carter returned to the summit floor, ready to continue leading, mentoring, and expanding her legacy, a force unstoppable, resilient, and profoundly inspiring. Standing there, in a charcoal coat and holding a small bouquet of lilies, was David. The years had changed him. The sharpness in his eyes had softened. The arrogance that once defined his posture was gone. His expression was calm, not seeking forgiveness, not pleading, just present. "Hi, Emily," he said quietly, his voice low and measured. "I hope I'm not intruding." For a moment, the air between them hung heavy with memories. The laughter, the dinners, the cold words, the silence. All the things that had been said and all the things that had never been. Emily's hand tightened slightly on the doorknob, but her voice remained steady. "David, it's been a long time." He nodded, offering a faint, hesitant smile. "Too long." She stepped aside, allowing him in. The house was filled with warmth, framed photos of her travels, awards, and the quiet hum of classical music playing from the nearby speaker. David looked around, taking it all in. "You've built quite a life," he said softly. "Everything you used to dream about, it's all here." Emily folded her arms lightly. "Dreams only matter when you work for them. I had to rebuild everything, including myself." He nodded, guilt flickering across his face. "I know, and I think that's why I'm here." She motioned toward the living room and they sat across from each other, the fire crackling gently between them. For a while, neither spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy with history. Finally, David spoke. "I watched your interview last week, the one where you turned down the billion-dollar offer. It was powerful. You've always had that ability to stand by what matters, even when the world doesn't understand it." Emily's gaze remained steady. "Back then, you didn't understand it either." He nodded, taking the truth without flinching. "No, I didn't. I was too busy trying to be the loudest person in the room to realize the quietest one had all the strength." She looked down, thoughtful. "You've changed," he said. "I've had time to think, to see what I was, what I lost. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, Emily. I know I don't deserve it. I needed to see you face to face. To thank you." Her brows furrowed slightly. "Thank me." David nodded. "You taught me something no one else ever could. That strength doesn't come from control. It comes from character. I used to think you needed me. Turns out I needed you to learn who I was supposed to be." For a long moment, Emily said nothing. The firelight flickered between them, casting soft shadows across their faces. Two people bound by the past, but no longer trapped by it. "I don't hate you, David," she said finally. "I stopped carrying that weight a long time ago. But I also stopped living for closure. What happened between us, it built me. It forced me to find my voice. So if you came here for forgiveness, you already have it. Just not the way you think." He exhaled slowly, emotion flickering in his eyes. "That's more than I deserve." She smiled faintly. "Maybe, but it's enough." He placed the bouquet of lilies on the table. "Her mother's favorite flower," he said softly. "These aren't for me. They're for her. For the woman who raised you into the kind of person the world needed." Emily's expression softened, a flicker of warmth breaking through her composure. "Thank you, David." He stood, straightening his coat. "You know, I thought coming here would be hard.
but it's not. It's peaceful. You've built something beautiful, Emily. I'm proud of you. She met his eyes, her voice calm and sincere. I hope you've found peace too. He nodded once, then turned toward the door. As he stepped outside, the evening light painted the world in gold. For a brief moment, Emily watched him walk down the path, not as a ghost from her past, but as a man finally learning to live in truth. She closed the door quietly, the bouquet of lilies still on the table beside the fire. The scent of lilies filled the air, gentle, familiar, comforting. Emily stood there for a long moment, staring into the flames. There was no anger, no sadness, only closure. Some stories don't need perfect endings. They just need peace.